I was fired from my job after false allegations were made against me, accusing me of dropping my trousers in front of an employee, but the CCTV proves my innocence, so should I sue? I held a management position at a company. I asked a non-management employee of the opposite sex to step into another room to discuss her performance away from other employees. She was going through a divorce and had made a few mistakes. While I didn't want to embarrass her, I did want to ensure the mistakes were addressed. She acknowledged it and thanked me. An hour later, I was escorted from my office by security and informed by my boss that a harassment complaint had been made against me. The proper protocol was to suspend me. I asked what the complaint was, but I was told, "We need to investigate. I can't disclose that." He assured me that the investigation shouldn't take long and that if I wasn't guilty of anything, I would be paid for the time out. I again asked what the accusation was, but he repeated that since there was an ongoing investigation, I was not permitted to know. However, if they had questions, they would contact me. I wasn't happy, but knowing I had done nothing wrong, I left the building. Later that night, I received a notification on my phone that my email password was incorrect. After 2 days, I called my boss for an update, but I was told he was unavailable and that I would hear something soon. I began calling daily and received the same response each time. Finally, I received a letter in the mail informing me that I was terminated for exposing myself and requesting intimate favors from an employee. The employee listed was the young lady I had pulled into the side room. I immediately called my boss, but I was told, "He is unavailable and said to inform you that the matter is closed." My buddy, the IT guy, messaged me on Facebook asking what happened, as he had been instructed to deactivate my accounts. When I told him the whole story, he replied, "You took her into the X room. Dude, there's a security camera in there. We keep Y in there, so we always have the camera on." Sure enough, he pulled the footage, and there I was, holding a pile of papers, pointing to them, and keeping my pants on the entire time. I left a message for my boss stating that the alleged incident occurred in a room with surveillance and that I would be contacting an attorney and subpoenaing the video record. 15 minutes later, I received a call asking me to participate in a phone conference with him and HR. The conference went as expected. They didn't realize the incident had occurred in a room with surveillance. They reiterated that they have a zero-tolerance policy, that you can't be too careful in this day and age, and that they regret this wasn't discovered sooner. They had already replaced me, and since it wouldn't be fair to terminate my replacement, who had done nothing wrong, they didn't have a job to offer me back. However, as a gesture of goodwill, they would pay me for the duration of my suspension, change my file to indicate that I voluntarily resigned, and provide me with a good reference. I replied that this was not acceptable. They made a false accusation against me, withheld vital information that I could have easily refuted, refused to take my calls, and completely failed in their own investigation by not reviewing video footage that would have immediately exonerated me. They asked what I thought would be fair. I told them they could either immediately terminate the employee who made the accusation and reinstate me, or pay me 1 year's salary in addition to what was already offered. My boss stated that he could not discuss another employee with me and that neither of my proposed options were feasible. He reiterated that the only options available were those he had already offered. I responded that the options I provided were the only way I would not pursue legal action against the company and the employee. My boss then reminded me that I had signed an agreement upon hiring, stating that I would take all disputes to arbitration and that I had waived my right to sue the company. I do not recall signing this agreement, and I have not seen it, but apparently, it states that I must take all disputes to arbitration, bear the costs of arbitration, and accept the decision made in arbitration. He claimed that I would not fare any better in arbitration than with his current offer and that I would end up paying for the arbitration process myself. I feel like I am being bullied, and I doubt my boss would have scheduled a phone conference so urgently if the company didn't feel vulnerable to a lawsuit. I am currently waiting for callbacks from a few employment attorneys. Do I have a case? Am I wrong to feel that this is unacceptable? Relevant comments. Comment 1. Get a lawyer and have him subpoena that video before it gets lost. Response. I have the entire conference on tape. My boss admitted that the footage proves the accusation was unfounded and that if they had reviewed it earlier, they could have offered me my job back. The harassment policy states that all allegations must be investigated, that the offending party may be suspended, and that if the claim is found to be unsubstantiated, the accused will be paid for their time off and reinstated without penalty or a negative record. Since they took a full 2 weeks to investigate the allegation, I requested a copy of the report detailing the evidence they used to determine the false accusation was true. My boss claimed this information was privileged. The total time from my notice of termination to my call to the office was 27 hours. The conference call occurred 14 hours later, meaning they had already replaced me before the supposed investigation even concluded, which I do not believe ever actually happened. Comment 2. Yes, you can sue. You can sue the company or the lady who made the false allegations. Response. She's been ranting about fighting her husband for the house during her divorce. I wonder how pissed she'll be when she has to fight me for it. I fully intend to take her to court. I had sympathy for her because I knew she was going through a tough time, but after this, I'm going after every dime she has. Update 1. Quite a bit has happened in the last few weeks. A friend of mine at another company, after hearing what happened, told me his company had an opening. I applied, interviewed, and at the end, the manager asked me what I'd like to be called. 2 days later, I got a call saying they had chosen another candidate. My friend admitted to me that he had gotten some flack for recommending me. Apparently, HR had worked with an employee from my former company and reached out to ask about me. The employee responded, he got fired for inappropriate workplace conduct to a subordinate. I think he's actually being charged criminally. I'm literally crying as I type this. It's a nightmare that won't end. Long story short, I lost my composure, called up my old company, and my boss refused to get on the phone with me. I had an attorney draft a letter of demand and send it off. This led to another scheduled phone conference. Once again, they regret that an employee provided a reference outside of the prescribed channels. The employee was merely coached on the proper way to handle such requests. My attorney informed them that, in addition to wrongful termination, we would be adding defamation to our complaint against them. They insist that they have not broken any laws and cannot control the actions of an individual employee who went against company policy. So, we're at an impasse. Either I move forward with legal action, or I walk away. At this point, I'm ready to drag this through court. I tried to take the high road and move on, but they keep regretting everything they've done to me without actually taking any action to fix it. Oh, I almost forgot. Just a few days after my last post, they sent me a packet of papers. It contains standard non-disclosure notifications, COBRA information, and a blank copy of the arbitration agreement for me to sign. Why a blank one, you ask? Well, it seems somebody messed up. They weren't making employees sign it when I was hired, and HR never bothered to have me sign it while I worked there. Of course, I have signed nothing they sent me, including that agreement. I considered allowing arbitration if they agreed to cover the costs and I had approval over the arbitrator, but my attorney strongly advised against it. I wish I had better news to report. Things aren't as hopeless as they first seemed, but they're not easily fixable either. As for the employee who made the accusation, I know you're eager to hear, but at this point, I can't comment on what's happening there. Thanks for all the advice and support so far. I promise to update when everything is resolved, or sooner, if I can. Update 2. Everything has been resolved. I've been wanting to give you all an update, but I had to wait until my lawyer gave me the okay to talk about it. Let's start from the beginning. I pulled one of my direct reports, Deborah, into another room to discuss a few mistakes she had made, but I did not discipline her further. After this, she went to Joyce, one of the managers above me, though not in my direct chain of command. She was equal to my boss in terms of reporting structure. When Joyce heard that I had taken Deborah into another room without witnesses, she told her that it was unprofessional. Apparently, Joyce's exact words were, you could accuse him of being inappropriate with you, and I would have no choice but to believe you. She repeated this multiple times, placing a strong emphasis on no choice. Joyce then asked Deborah if I had been inappropriate with her, adding, it will only happen again if you don't speak up now. If you do it now, we can take action. Taking the not at all subtle hint, Deborah accused me of exposing myself to her, and I was placed on leave pending an investigation. Joyce immediately sent out an email stating that nobody, except the secretary, was to speak with me without an attorney present. She also instructed the IT guy, Paul, to deactivate my access. By the end of the day, James, my boss, had received a resume from Terry, an employee in Joyce's department, applying for my job. She was hired. Paul and I talked. He provided me with video footage proving my innocence. The company continued to stonewall me and refused to communicate. When they finally did, they attempted to push me into arbitration and retroactively sign an arbitration agreement. I cut my losses, took another job, and was ready to move on. Then Sandy, an employee in Joyce's department, broke protocol, spoke to HR at my new company, and told them I had SA at a subordinate, costing me the job. So that brings us up to date. My attorney and I launched a civil suit against both the company and Deborah. I bet you're wondering how I know all of this. Well, good old Joyce had promised to protect Deborah if she came forward. Unfortunately, that only extended to her job. So when Deborah was named individually in the lawsuit, corporate informed her they would not be providing her with an attorney. After realizing that she would have to put her house up as collateral for legal fees, Deborah was more than willing to throw Joyce under the bus. Joyce had gone to Paul, the IT guy, who was one of her reports, and gave him a list of footage to be procedurally wiped as part of an archive clear-out. Paul pointed out that the footage involving me was on that list and was part of an ongoing investigation. Joyce told him it was no longer needed and to wipe it. Paul refused, citing that it would still be requested if the lawsuit moved forward. Joyce then told him to pack his things. He was being terminated for insubordination. Paul called the company attorney and informed her of what had just happened. The aftermath. Several things happened at once, so I'll try to keep this in order. Deborah's attorney contacted mine, stating that if I agreed to drop the suit against her, she would admit that she had lied and explain what happened behind the scenes. Dana, the company attorney, got a call from my attorney with details from Deborah, shortly after she had finished talking with Paul about him being fired for refusing to destroy evidence. Deborah and Joyce were terminated for cause that day. Paul was told his job was safe. My attorney received a call making it clear that the company did not want this to go any further and wanted to discuss a settlement. I won't go into all the details, but here's what I can share. I was offered my job back with a very fair salary increase. I received full back pay from the date of my suspension. A public apology was issued from the very top of the company. Terry, who had replaced me, is now working in Joyce's old position. She's incredibly cool about everything and was horrified when she learned what had happened. James and I are on good terms now. He personally apologized for not standing up for me. This will likely be my final update. There's still some ongoing legal action, but I can't discuss that yet. Thank you all for your support and encouragement. You guys rock.